Hello and welcome to an I Told You So, You Sons of Bitches episode of TJs One of Us here at the Always Next Year podcast. I'm the host of this segment, Shane Mead. You can follow me at Twitter at Shane_Mead. And you can follow the podcast at ANY Podcast. And damn it, I told you to calm down. I told you Game 2 would go better. I told you Tobias Harris would show up. And I told you that Ben Simmons would show up. And what happened? They showed the hell up. 76ers dropped 51 points in the third quarter. It's a playoff high. They won this game 145 to 123. Don't let that score even convince you that it was even that close. We rested our starters for the last 8 minutes of the game. It was absurd. So for everyone sitting there flipping the hell out at game one, saying we'll never figure out Brooklyn, that Ben Simmons will never be an assertive player, that Tobias Harris is never going to shoot again, and that they're never going to shoot three balls again, and they're going to shoot 12% behind the arc and 60% from the free throw line. Shut the hell up. I told you. I told you. Calm the hell down. Whew, that feels good. One thing I will say. If you can play in a way that lets a very unhealthy Joel Embiid only play 20 to 25 minutes and have the type of game they had last night, and the game plan was significantly better, the defensive switching was better, everything was better, that's going to really help. Joe last night had a significantly better game, and you could tell he's not right. You can still tell that, but he only had to play 21 freaking minutes. In 21 minutes, he had 23 points, 10 boards. He shot at a much, much better clip. Shot 8 of 12, or 8 of 13, 8 of 12 or 8 of 13 from the floor, and then he shot 7 of 8 from the line. If that is all we need for the first round of the playoffs to get by the very beatable Brooklyn freaking Nets that people are having heart attacks about, that's going to significantly help a guy who's not 100% by not having to go out there and play 40 freaking minutes a night and then just get demolished in the second round by whomever we end up playing. This is big. If the rest of the offense can show the type of assertiveness and consistency that they did last night, and that we can help manage our MVP superstar centers' minutes, I'm not concerned at all, and you shouldn't be either. Tobias Harris, everyone else ripped him from the, well, people have been ripping him really for most of his Sixers tenure, because he did go quiet for 5 weeks to close the season. And then he certainly had a really bad game one, both defensively and offensively. 2 of 7 from the floor on night one for, I think, 7 points. He wasn't right. He scored 19. He had 19, he had 5 boards, he had 2 assists. He went 5 of 12 from the floor, so 42% from the field. Not an awesome percentage, but good enough. And then most importantly, he went 7 of 7 from the line. Tobias Harris got to the freaking free throw line. That makes me so happy. It should make everyone happy. That means that there was some aggressiveness, some assertiveness, some willingness to get into the paint and get into the dirty areas. Good for Tobias Harris. Way to shut Philadelphia up. I appreciate you, man. And then we could talk about Ben Simmons real quick. And you could tell right from the damn start, Ben Simmons had every intention of coming in here because he knew. He's not a dumb guy. He spoke out of emotion and he said a dumbass comment after game one. He sat there and said, if you're going to boo, stay the hell on that side. It's not meaning that. It's an emotional moment. He said one freaking thing, but it's Philadelphia, so we got to blow everything out of goddamn proportion and sit there and think that no one's ever had a feeling before. He's pissed off. He was embarrassed. He had a shit game. The Sixers had a shit game. So you could tell from the drop that he knew what he needed to do. Not just for the Philadelphia 76ers, but for himself that night. He got the crowd involved. You saw him giving the Iverson here. You saw him walking around waving his hands up, trying to pump the crowd up. You saw him getting to the rim. You saw him doing everything he needed to do, and he played a damn good defensive game, too. He finished with a triple-double. He finished with 18 points, 10 boards, 12 assists, 2 steals. He had incredibly active hands on the defensive side of the floor last night, which was really, really impressive and really, really good to see. He went 8 of 12 from the floor. He did go 2 of 4 from the free throw line. That is the only area that I would say that I need a more consistent improvement upon. And it's not to say that he didn't try. There were a handful of times, especially late in the game, he poked a steal and he tried to draw contact on a partial breakaway in which he did knock down the bucket and didn't get the foul call. There was an attempt there to draw contact throughout this game. He didn't really get those calls. but there's a willingness. Regardless, as your point guard and your main ball handler, I do expect him to get to the line 10, 12 times a night. That's probably my only real issue with Ben Simmons' game last night. Other than that, that's probably the best game he plays as a 76er, considering the stage and considering the circumstances of coming back onto your home court 2 days after you made a dumbass comment in the harshest city in America. Marjanovic again, Bobby doing Bobby things. It's weird to sit there and say, like, he immediately integrated himself into Philadelphia because we love characters, right? We love caricatures. We love the relationship between Toby and Bobby. We thought it was awesome. We get him in here and he immediately makes the impact. He's a huge dude and he's a funny guy. But he kind of went quiet and he kind of didn't have a real defined role within the 76ers. Brett Brown, I don't really think, knew how to use him. For as big as he is, he's incredibly soft. He's not very athletic. He's not very good on the defensive side. He can rebound over people because he just got to stand there. But there was always different concerns as to how and when to use him. In a night like this, and in a postseason where Joel Embiid, your MVP center, isn't right, knowing that you can give a guy like Bobby Marjanovic, I think he got 17 minutes. What we got? Let's see. I'll pull it up now. 18 minutes on the court last night, and I think he had 15 the night before, or 2 nights before. But in 18 minutes, he had 16 points and he had 8 boards, and he shot 8 of 14 from the floor. To know that you can get that kind of scoring production from a big, and he's scoring from in the paint, over those rebounds that he just towers over people and scares the hell out of you because he just holds the ball up there with these soft hands, and then finally puts it up off the glass and gets it to go in. But he's also knocking down that 10 to 12, 10 to 14 foot jump shot with pretty solid consistency. So to know that when Joe comes off the floor, that yes, there's going to be a defensive reduction in the capability on the floor at that point, but on the offensive standpoint, he's shown the ability to knock down shots, from those 2 spots really, really consistently. And that's huge. Because right now, I mean, we've seen it throughout the last 3 weeks of the NBA season for the 76ers. This team has gone cold so many times for 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes in Orlando. To know that you have a backup center in there that can shoot and knock down those types of shots, that's big. Another really, really nice standpoint from this is the fact that the bench did perform really, really well in not necessarily the sexiest of areas. The only one who really kind of made an impact on the score sheet was Michael Scott, who went 5 of 7 from the floor and 2 of 2, or 3 of 4, or 3 of 5 from 3. But he had 15 points in like 22 minutes, I want to say. He is a garbage defender. I know he's supposed to be okay, but watching him play defense does infuriate me. I can't even lie about that. But then we had James Ennis come in there, and he played, I think, 10 minutes, I want to say, 10, 12. I'll pull it up. Jesus, I should probably just have the stat sheets up. James Ennis played 12 minutes. And like 4 of that was at the end of the game when nothing freaking mattered. But, for 8 minutes to know that he's going to come in there and he had 6 points, he had 3 boards, he had an assist. Not the sexiest of stats, but he played really nice defense. And his overall game on the court translated well for those that he was on the court with. And that was big because the chemistry issue on this team is constantly there. That question is constantly there. And knowing that he's back and knowing that he's healthy-ish, that's a really, really big thing. We did not see my guy Zaire Smith, so I know on the last pod I sat there and said I would be giving him all of the minutes that I possibly could. They didn't. I don't even think he dressed. But on a night like tonight, it's okay because score 145 points, you could do whatever the hell you want. Name we haven't talked about yet, Jimmy Butler. So, I find it funny. So, on a couple episodes of TJs One Of Us, the fan edition, we had a guy on, Scott, who had said that all he's really expecting from Jimmy Butler in this first series is to play really solid defense, and like one night he was going to go off scoring and score 27. So on Saturday, I get a text from him that says 27 with an exclamation point. And I'm like, all right, Jimmy's gotten his 27 game. So if we're holding true to Scott's prediction, All he really needs to do is play good defense for the rest of the series, and he will have met the expectations of at least one 76ers fan. Well, he played really good defense again, and that was big. He did not shoot the ball particularly well on Monday night tonight. He went 3 of 10 from the field. He was 1 of 2 from the line, so Jimmy not getting to the free throw line is a bit concerning. And then he was 0 for 1 from 3. He had 7 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal. That being said, hold on. Gotta love being sick and recording podcasts. This is a pain in the ass. But that said, Jimmy did bring an intensity on the defensive side of the court, and he brought a sense of stability and calmness there. When early on the game was tight for a while. Like we'd get up 8 or 10, and then Brooklyn would bring it right back to 2. There was never that like clear and consistent separation, and it was when Brooklyn was making those 6-point runs and 8-point runs to bring these games back close. The ball wasn't in Ben Simmons' hands, it wasn't in Tobias Harris' hands, it was in Jimmy Butler's hands. And there was a sense of calmness that you could tell just radiated across the court for the 76ers, knowing Jimmy Butler was there, knowing he was on the court, and he was going to make the correct reads at when you needed that to happen. So while they were just a possession here and there at the tail ends of those runs, he was kind of the run stopper there, which was important to me. Whether he was dishing something off for a Tobias Harris jumper, whether he was getting inside for one of his or 2 of his 7 points, he was active out there and he calmed things down, and that was big. You need someone that's going to be able to do that. So if Jimmy can continue to play on defense, and I also think it's very unrealistic to expect that he's going to shoot 30% from the floor, not get to the free throw line but 2 times, and only score 7 points. So if you can figure between 7 and 36, if he's going to average pretty much his season average of like 19 points a night in the playoffs, with this kind of defensive intensity, with the kind of calmness that he brings to when he brings the ball up at the tail ends of these runs for other teams, Jimmy Butler's the guy. So I'm cool with Jimmy Butler's night, for Game 2 tonight. I know that the score sheet isn't as flashy as it was on Game 1, but he did all the things that the score sheet doesn't flash, and I was impressed with the game for him regardless. So the series is now tied 1-1. I'm keeping this one a little shorter because I am just feeling like dog shit. But the series is tied 1-1, and the 76ers have answered your concerns. Everyone was 1 foot off the Ben Franklin. They were ready to go. They were ready to say, this is it. The 76ers season is done. Calm down. I told you to calm down. I said that Ben Simmons was going to come out and be assertive, and he was. I said that Tobias Harris was never going to be as cold as he was, and he wasn't. I said calm down. I was right. Not saying I'm right about everything, but I'm saying I was right about this so far. And I think I'm going to keep being right. I don't think that there should be any major concerns that the 76ers get past the Brooklyn Nets in the playoffs. If you remember in 2001, 76ers, and this is not everyone's favorite memory, but in Game 1, 76ers beat the Lakers. We had no business beating the Lakers in even one of those games that year. But we beat them on their home court in Game 1. And then we were embarrassed for 4 straight games. I'm not saying we're going to embarrass the Nets for 4 straight games, but I'm saying we certainly have the ability to. If you look at the Brooklyn Nets, they have Spencer Dinwiddie and they have D'Angelo Russell, who both shoot the basketball incredibly well. And then what the hell do they have? To logically sit there and think that that team is going to be the team that features MVP Joel Embiid, even at 60-65%. To think that that team is going to beat Ben Simmons, a constant triple-double threat, a guy who can beat you in a multitude of different ways on both ends of the floor, that's unrealistic. To think that they're going to beat Jimmy Butler, the fuck you version of Jimmy Butler that's clearly shown up in the playoffs, unrealistic. To sit there and think that they're going to beat Tobias Harris, one of the cleanest shooters in the NBA, unrealistic. To think that they're going to contain J.J. Redick and allow him to score 5 freaking points a night as he did in Game 1, unrealistic. So put all 5 of those guys up against D'Angelo freaking Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, and you were concerned? You're dumb as hell. You are dumb as hell. 76ers basketball is too strong. The roster right now is too strong, and I'm not saying it's not flawed. It certainly is. There should be concerns beyond this series. But for this series against Brooklyn, calm the hell down. Enjoy it. Next series, if we are lucky enough to get there, which I believe we will be, then you can sit there and say, we need the bench to be consistently strong. We need Brett's rotational minutes to be strong. We need the defensive mishaps that have continued to follow and plague this team to not be there. We need those things corrected. Right now, against the Brooklyn Nets, talent on paper is going to win this series. It's pretty much as easy as that. Stop with the concerns. So they will be back. Let me see. 76ers are back. I hate the NBA and the way they break this shit down. They won't be back until Thursday night because apparently they need all this time off in between games, which is absolute absurdity. But they will be in Brooklyn for Game 3 at 8 p.m. on Thursday evening. And then I will bring you either Thursday evening or Friday evening. I'll bring you a recap of Game 3. And since I gave predictions as to what was going to occur in Game 2, and I was correct, and golly, I'm hot today, I'm going to give predictions on Game 3. I think Jimmy Butler's going to come out and he's going to score 25, and he's going to have the same type of defensive impact and intensity that he's had. I think Ben Simmons is going to improve upon what he did in Game 2, and especially being away from Philadelphia and being in Brooklyn, I think he's going to have that moment to breathe a little bit and not going to have the extra added pressure of knowing you are in front of your home fans, and I think he's going to go off. I think he's having a 20-plus point night. I think triple-double's probably on the table for him again, and his defensive intensity is going to be there again. I think Joel Embiid and Bobby, I think between the two of them, I think they get 40 points. I think Joe's going to have a nice scoring night, and I do think that Bobby's going to continue to score the basketball as well. And I actually think that the couple days off here will re-energize Joel Embiid a little bit more again. He's played light minutes in each of the two games. So coming back into Game 3 with the extra day off there as well, and we don't have far to travel. It's a bus ride. It's not that big of a deal. I think that you should expect a pretty big game from Joel Embiid, who did make an improvement from Game 1 to Game 2. I think the 76ers will win Game 3 fairly handedly. I do think that it will start off a little rough, being in Brooklyn, an organization that had been out of the playoffs for a bit, and a fan base that does enjoy their basketball there, at least right now. They didn't always. But I do think that the first half will be pretty tight, but I do expect another third quarter explosion. I'm not saying 51 points, but it's going to be another double-digit win for the Philadelphia 76ers. And people who think otherwise should calm the hell down, because even if I am wrong, we're still going to beat the freaking Nets. We're still going to beat the Nets, so calm the hell down. This is going to be it for this episode of TJs One of Us with the Always Next Year podcast. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, Spotify, SoundCloud. Wherever you listen to podcasts, we should theoretically be on it. Give us a rating and a review. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at AMY Podcast. You can follow me, the host of TJs One of Us, at Shane_Mead. You can also follow the part-time host, Kevin K, at Kevman316. And we will be back, like I said, for TJs One of Us. I'll be back on Thursday or Friday night after Game 3.